Hey, what's up everybody? Hope you're having an amazing day so far. I'm your host Phil. In today's video, we're gonna check out a setup using the ToneX and the Power-Amp against the real amp pendant. So let's roll that intro clip and then get into some riffing. Welcome again to today's video, everybody. Yeah, thank you for tuning in. In this video, I want to shoot out, as I said before, a ToneX Power-Amp setup against the real deal, which is actually capturing. More words on the setup later. I want to first now say a huge thank you to everybody who watched the video which I previously released, which was the comparison of the ToneX 1.10 release, where they had an enhanced modeling algorithm and shoot it out against the neural amp modeler. A lot of positive feedback, a lot of views, a lot of, engagement within the community. That was really nice to see, and it really shows that I do have my place within this community and that stuff which I'm bringing out is valued, and that's super appreciated. I mean, I do all of this hobbyist things for myself, but it's always nice to see when people actually recognize you and then also appreciate what you're doing. So I'm very, very thankful for that. All right, let's talk about the setup over here. We're gonna compare two different setups. The amplifier setup is consisting of this guitar over here, obviously, my trusty Solar A2.6 LN with Lundgren Black Heaven pickups. That's going into the Lichtlaerm Audio King in Yellow. That then goes into the EVH5150 III on the blue channel, out of screen. That then goes to the Marshall 1960 AV with the Marshall G12 Vintage, basically vintage 30s, made for Marshall. And that's then mic'd up by these three microphones, which are the MB75 from T-Bone, the Tolman house brand, SM57 from Shure, and then we got the T-Bone RB500. Those are the microphones you're gonna hear, and that's the amp setup. When we're gonna move over through some video editing magic to the ToneX, because I don't want to then re-explain, and I want to have like them piece by piece, the two playing sections. We're gonna go through the ToneX pedal simply, and then into the Thunder 99 Power-Amp. That's a very, very affordable, like 100 euros, stereo solid state power amp, and that then goes into the Marshall cabinet and is mic'd up. So, and the reason why I'm doing this is because I was really surprised how close they sound to each other. It's not much that there's missing anymore, and I think for what the ToneX pedal offers and this kind of setup, how compact it is, that's really, really awesome. Okay, but nonetheless, let's get into some riffing. Before we dive into the A-B direct comparison, a few thoughts on what I was hearing and listening to when I was playing through both of these setups. Now, when I'm playing through the amplifier, there's a little bit more low end, a little bit more girth. There's also more headroom for cranking the volume than there is on the ToneX setup, which I got currently over here. And yeah, but however, they both sound remarkably good, and interestingly, the ToneX and Power-Amp setup has its own benefits beyond the amplifier, also from an audible perspective. Now, when I'm talking about the low end and more girth on the amplifier, that is exactly what clouds up a mix. And to be honest, if I would have to choose something based on just how it sounds in the band context, I think that the ToneX Power-Amp setup, through the lack of low end, would sound better than the actual amplifier. Of course, you can enhance the depth on the ToneX, you can set the bass over here, you can do the same over there on the amplifier, take a little bit bass out, whatever. So you can shape the tone, you got all those possibilities, but still we are interested more in an A-B comparison setup. And yeah, to be very honest, you know, like, just look at the size of this over here. This is awesome. You only got this small thing over here and this over here, and then you're good to go. And if you go with the ToneX one, then you are even more compact. Let me plug this all back in. Now, what I really like about this ToneX setup over here compared to the amplifier, even though it's awesome in its own right, and I love analog gear. You know, you have seen the wall in the older videos where I got all of these amplifiers. So what I just love about this is that you have so much flexibility, you know, like I can now set up a clean tone over here, which I prepared with chorus. Then go to some lead, not lead, rhythm. Then go over to some lead. And you can do that all on this small compact form factor. Can you imagine what kind of a pedal board I gotta bring with me if I wanna do that on the analog realm? Which I do have over here, by the way, you know, like right behind the... So I can really actually use all of that. I also recently acquired some Boss Wazacraft chorus pedals, which sound absolutely fantastic and which I'm gonna shoot out soon. But yeah, you know, like, this stuff is awesome. Okay. Now that we have heard the setups, to you know, like in comparison, just playing through them, now let's move over to the direct A-B comparison. All right, let's get into the segment where we are looking more in-depth, or not in-depth, but a little bit more accurate at the differences and listening for true differences. So what I've done so far is I made sure that the ToneX and the amp setup over here, greenish track being the amplifier track, and the blue purplish track being the ToneX plus Power-Amp track going through the cabinet. I made sure that they're absolutely the same volume. What I also already did is I phase aligned them perfectly and did my null testing. The null testing showed that there is like 12 dB of delta. So let's just listen to that very shortly, so just that you get a picture of what's going on. So you can hear a lot of stuff is being canceled out, and that's really remarkable given the fact that we are using two completely separate chains from each other. So we're using one complete analog chain with the pedal and the amplifier going to the amplifier, and then we're using an replica of that, so to speak, in regards of capturing technology and a power amp, which should basically sound much more different according to what the internet says about differences between power amps. I personally find that very interesting because it just shows that this kind of setup can sound very similar to the real setup. Let's move on with the A/B toggling, where I'm just going to roll through the riff, and whenever you see the solo button on either one of those tracks, that means that track is currently active. Can you discern a difference? Let's find out. Let's talk a little bit about what we just heard and what we saw. Of course, I'm going to formulate my own thoughts and opinions. Yours might differ. If they do so, let me know down below in the comments. Would love to hear what you guys think of this. When I'm listening to the amp versus the ToneX setup, then I do hear differences. The main difference, however, very small, is how abrasive the mids are. The mids are a little bit wilder, a little bit more untamed and abrasive when I am using the amplifier compared to the ToneX. However, I personally would argue that, or I would actually bet money on it, that if I would play the amp as the second track and not let you know which one is which, most people would say that the amp track, because of the abrasive mids, is the ToneX. A lot of people would then say, that doesn't sound right, you know, the other one is a little bit smoother, this is a little bit untamed, therefore it is not copying it as good, there are added artifacts, that is the ToneX. I would bet money on that most people would get this wrong in that regard. And with that, we are basically already into the conclusion part. Given all the information which we gathered now out of the previous video and this one, I personally have to say that the ToneX in tandem with this power amp is a winning combination against the whole analog stack of equipment which I would have to use in order to get comparable tones. I think it's mainly, of course, a convenience factor, which really appeals to me in regard of the ToneX, but not only that, I think that the sound is really, really close and in some respect even better. And then, of course, you got the convenient stuff on top. I can now easily go ahead, assign a clean tone over here with my jazz chorus, for example, capture that one and assign it over here. My EVH on the rhythm channel in the middle, and maybe my Marshall JVM with some more MIDI flubby tones on the lead preset over here, and I could use them then all together at once with this power amp, which sounds spectacular. You know, really cool stuff, really looking forward to it. The effects are absolutely great on the ToneX pedal. The only thing which really is not to my taste is the noise gate, but I can live with that if need be. Yeah, so the ToneX is really catching up on the tier list of capturing hardware, if you want to say so, through the new modeling algorithm. Now, things which I personally miss a lot when it comes to the ToneX is a smaller preset switching gap. So we got like 15 or 20 seconds, not milliseconds of preset switching. However, that is super audible for me. Very irritating and frustrating to play with that. Personally, the dime head NAMP player has absolute 0 milliseconds of preset switching gap, which is phenomenal, awesome stuff. So they would have to get it down to somewhere between 3 or 5 milliseconds for me to be satisfied with that one. The other thing, and that's a big one for me, is dual outputs in regard of one having an IR, one not having an IR. That way I can still power up this setup over here with the non-IR output while still going front of house with a DI box out of the IR output. that is basically a game changer for me, why the dime head NAMM player has basically knocked away the ToneX pedal from my board, apart from the fact that NAMM is more accurate and stuff like that. But that was the main deciding factor for me. So I hope at some point in time that ToneX will update, so IK Multimedia will update the ToneX pedal with those features. And I'm looking forward to the future of this. I think ToneX and the ToneX pedal is not yet at its, final form, so to speak. I think there's quite some stuff coming, and if we get the things which I hope for, then yeah, I think considering the price, then ToneX is unstoppable in that regard. I mean, anyways, I hope that you found something interesting out of this video. Let me know down below in the comments if you have differentiating thoughts and opinions from my findings over here, and hope you learned something, and see you in the next video. Until then, keep it metal.